Hello and welcome to Behind the Headlines. This is a Mint Press project, and I've got an incredible interview for you today. I hope you've been enjoying this interview series. I spoke with Julian Assange's wife, Stella Assange, a couple of days ago. Spoke recently with Chris Hedges and Richard Wolff. So many great voices have been on here, so I hope you'll keep watching and supporting us. YouTube.com/Behind the Headlines. Today, I'm speaking to America's lawyer, Mike Papantonio. He's one of the most successful lawyers in America, but actually successful at holding corporate America to account, which is not something you hear enough, I feel, from our legal profession. Also has had incredibly successful TV shows and radio shows, such as The Ring of Fire. So let's bring in Mike Papantonio.
Lee, how are you today?
Mike, it's good to talk to you again.
Good to see you.
Yeah, it's been too long. I hope you're doing well. I was excited to talk to you because there is so much going on in terms of what corporate America, the various crimes corporate America finds itself involved in, and one of the ones you've been doing some great coverage of recently, which has slipped through the cracks in my awareness of it, is studies showing that social media is impacting brain development, and there's actually lawsuits against some of these social media giants, right?
Yeah, we've been asked to kind of head some of that up. For so long, they've gotten away with a lot, Lee. There's that Section 230 that gives them this immunity from being sued. It's a disaster. But this case is a little different. This is where I don't know if you remember the case of the Slender Man murder. That's
vaguely.
Yeah, 11-year-old girl, she gets her friend to come out in the forest and stabs her 19 times. The child lives, but barely. But out of that came some studies, and they were trying to figure out what influenced this child, because she kept saying, well, Slender Man, and blogs. It was all about internet interaction. So a study was done, and it was pretty impressive study it's a psychological association that there's known for doing series of studies like this.
Right.
And what they found out was that the problem's a lot worse than what the public wants to believe. They all want to say, we all want to talk about personal responsibility, and maybe the parents were bad and this kid is just defective, damaged goods, and so on. But that's not what that's what the empirical data is. The empirical data is very clear. What's happening right now is that Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and WhatsApp and all of them have figured out the formula for making a kid stay on their network for as long as possible, to where it's constant. And so what's happening is they've built up this notion in kids' minds, and this is after study, after following these kids for years. They know that part of the problem is that the studies that these tech companies did were to figure out, how do you make that kid feel that they're not good enough? How do you make them feel like they don't own up to their peers? How do you make them feel like they have to have acceptance all the time? How do you make them feel like if they don't have acceptance, they're just not normal? All of this information has gone through the tech companies. And when we open up the depositions, when we see the documents, we're already seeing edges of that already. But we're already seeing it through the studies. Then they're saying this. There was a design, and the design is to keep that kid on Twitter or on Facebook or WhatsApp or TikTok as long as possible. And it's causing big problems. It's causing, everything from chronic depression to suicide, to where it's not something that you can overcome just with, psychological counseling, because it's become so internalized. So yeah, that case is developing, and, we're going to break some folks up.
Yeah, it sounds similar to, what they figured out with advertising, and what Edward Bernays introduced to us about how to hack the human psyche.
Yes.
But the difference is, with ads, even if you don't know to mute them or turn them off, usually they're in between other content. It's not endless. But if you're on a social media platform, it's endlessly trying to break you down to the point you feel like you need it to be there. And I guess children are the most susceptible.
Well, it's broken down to a biochemical reaction. See, this isn't guesswork. This is an observation. This is not subjective observation. This is where they took MRIs and they tested these kids to see what the biochemical reaction was to certain exposure. There's all kinds of things they do that with. So it wasn't something that was just arbitrary or really unusual. They use the same system to test a lot of things. They use it to test bipolar. They use it to test schizophrenia. They use it to find out a lot about what's going on with the structure of the brain, the biochemical mechanism of the brain. And the truth is, the tech companies have known this a long time, and they've simply capitalized on it. How long can you keep that 11-year-old kid on your network, hoping that, where they're thinking, I need acceptance, I need approval. How am I doing against the rest of the world? Let me check the comments. Let me check what I just put a comment out there. Let me check every 5 minutes what the reaction to that comment is. It's an addiction. And I promise you, I know when we started the opioid case, everybody thought, Pap, you're crazy. When we started the cigarette case right here in this law firm, everybody said, you're crazy, you can't do it. Well, no, we did. And we're going to do it here too.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was going to ask next, is even if people understand you and they say, oh, that's horrible, that they're trying to do that intentionally, can you actually win a lawsuit against these corporations? Or do they just say, well, it's human choice and we put a product out there and their choice?
Okay. Their biggest defense that we're going to hear is Section 230. It's a congressional piece of legislation that said if you're in this business, you have kind of immunity. Now, what that means is this. That means if somebody puts something on your platform that is slanderous, libel, whatever it is, if somebody puts something on your platform, you're protected from that. That's what 230 says. Right. 230 does not say that if the platform itself devises a program that is negligent or intentional, that you don't get protection out of 230. So the federal courts are going to have to interpret that. You've got one federal court that's already looked at it. Surprisingly enough, the worst decisions are coming out of California, which is amazing to me, because we usually get some of the most vibrant progressive decisions out of there. But on this, they think that what they're doing is protecting the media, that the media can do anything they want to do, and they're simply trying to protect the media. So they're making really bad decisions on this. I think it goes up the Supreme Court. We're going to win on this issue. The platform is not protected under 230 if the platform is the source of the problem.
I remember there were some articles a few years back where they had found out that Facebook was doing experiments where they were trying to depress people.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that, but I've seen similar things. See, that's the point. You've got these cats that have more money than third world countries. So they'll go to a university, they'll hire some cat that's working for $150,000. They'll say, look, we want to put you on a special project. The special project is, how do you hold an 11-year-old girl here for more than 15 minutes? How do you hold a 15-year-old boy here? So they get these folks that understand all the nuances of the kind of attraction we're talking about. I mean, this is what they spend their entire life studying. And so they go and they pay them a lot of money, and then they come up with a metric that allows that to happen on a regular basis, and they just build it into their system. I think people are going to be startled when those documents come out. We want to think, oh, social media, warm and fuzzy, woke, the new liberal edge of the world. That's total BS. These people are predators, man. They're predators that are no different from Wall Street bankers. So I don't know where that comes from, that, hey, this is the woke liberal edge. It's not. This is the woke liberal edge with fangs. I got to tell you.
Well, it's what we see in corporate America in general. They may pretend to be woke, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the dollar signs, and that's who their god is.
Of course, it's amazing to me when we'll do a story on our site, Ring of Fire, and Farron Cousins, and I'll go after them and big time, and these commenters coming, how can you do this? You're deconstructing social media. Yeah, we are. Hopefully, we'll make it better.
Well, social media has been coming after the likes of you and me for a long time now. So, speaking of social media, and I don't know, this topic's only related in the sense of it just shows more corruption and more influence on social media. But you guys over at Ring of Fire have also covered the former intelligence officers that are filling the ranks of social media, and this is also something that Alan McLeod, great journalist, has talked about.
You've talked about it. You were talking about it, Lee, before it was ever popular to be talked about. I recall back on RT America. But it's a funny thing. Take where you started this discussion years ago and talk about where it is now. Let me tell you where it is now. Okay, let me just give an example. So Lee Fong, Intercept, Lee, and Intercept is just spectacular. They have done the greatest job really kind of summing up what's going on out there. Okay. In order to have access, in order for YouTube, in order for Twitter and Facebook and WhatsApp, in order for them to get some, let's call it some passes, okay? The passes from the government. A pass, Lee, is when the government doesn't come after you for antitrust or for monopoly or for, all the many things that these tech companies are getting away with right now, or for spying on the American public. You see, so give us a pass, and we're going to bring in all of your ex-CIA agents and FBI agents to work in our ranks. All right. Now, it's not just one or two. In other words, you hear about Jim Baker. You know the story of Jim Baker. Jim Baker goes to Twitter. He suppresses, actively, aggressively suppresses the Hunter Biden story. He's the guy.
Right. We just got more information came out on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he actively gets there, but it's not just him. All of these tech companies have what they call trust and safety divisions. All right. Mm-hmm. Now, a trust and safety division is where they make a decision. Can we allow this to go forward? Do we have to censor it totally? Can we throttle it back? Can we throttle it forward? All right. The propaganda that they choose is up to them. There's nobody looking over their shoulder. Now, if you take a look at Twitter alone or Facebook alone, they all have these ex-CIA. Let me just give you some examples. For example, you've got Brian Weisband. He's former CIA intelligence. He's the director of trust and safety. Now, again, understand what trust and safety is. Trust and safety is the guy that's where the buck stops. You can't go forward without my permission. And he's going to decide what propaganda means for Facebook, for Meta. You've got Scott Stern, excuse me. So Scott Stern is also with trust and safety. He's the senior manager of risk intelligence. That's his title. What does Scott do? The same thing. He's the clearinghouse for what you can hear and what I can hear. Hagan Barnett, same thing. Head of harmful content operations. Head of harmful content operations. So he's the guy who says, you know what? I don't like this story because it's not setting in line with the propaganda that we're telling the folks out there. Let me tell you how crazy it is. Let me tell you how crazy this has become. It's an insane story.
Yeah.
it's gotten to where the point, Lee, to where they are creating fake newscasters. They might take my partner in media, Farron Cousins, for example. They might take you. They'll take your face, they'll morph your face, create a whole new Lee Camp. It won't be Lee Camp, it'll be another name. Then they create their own news service, Apex News Service. Well, that sounds like something that's critically important, right? So Doug Campus goes to Apex News Service. And then in that news service, a new story is created that's nothing more than propaganda. You know what they did with it? Let me give you some examples. One example of that was where they planted the story that Iran was putting meth into the drinking water in Iraq. And you know what? The idiot corporate media picked it up.
Wow.
Those, it's like tell the story, put it out there enough, tell the lie enough, and everybody's going to pick up on it. And that's what happened. But it's story after story. How do we want to make the pullout of Afghanistan look better? Okay, put this fake reporter with this fake news organization and the fake story. These are the guys who do that.
Yeah,
and it's not just Facebook, brother. It's all of them. And why do they do it? They do it to protect themselves. They feel like if we can load up with FBI and ex-FBI and CIA agents, that they're not going to come after us because we can flex our muscle and say, hey, listen, we got three spooks working here. Are you sure you want to come after us for monopoly?
Yeah, I remember Alan McLeod found that he found 100 former CIA or FBI working at Google. And that was only the people who had publicly put it on their LinkedIn profile. So for the ones who didn't feel they should have their former CIA work on their LinkedIn, that's all still secret.
Yeah. Well, like I say, Lee, you and I were doing RT together for a long time. You were doing the edge of this story a long time ago. And that's before we really knew the numbers, right? That's when we were kind of guessing. We're saying, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Who is this cat,
Right. Exactly. And of course, as you're saying, it's creating fake news, but it's also shadow banning or suppressing the news that is true, that is real. The stuff you and I do gets heavily suppressed. And a big example has come out, for all of Elon Musk's crazy awfulness that he pursues. He has done us a favor by revealing the internal workings of Twitter.
No kidding.
And we now know that the FBI has had, at least, I don't know what it is now, but had a very steady relationship with Twitter where they would tell them thousands of accounts to suppress or shut down, and Twitter just let it happen.
Well, and you know what, Lee? Put the tail on that thing. All right, the tale of that is that we know that when the church hearings took place in the United States, they took place because the government had found, well, not the government, whistleblowers had found that the CIA and the FBI were actively messing around in American politics. You remember that?
Yeah, vaguely.
So the church hearings go on for months. And out of the church hearings, they come out with some principles. They found out that the FBI was targeting people like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X.
And that was also where they revealed Operation Mockingbird with the CIA.
Exactly. That's all part of it. Mockingbird. It Phoenix, Operation Phoenix, that was taking place in Vietnam. So all of this starts coming out, and out of those hearings, they determine that the CIA and the FBI may not involve themselves with American politics, right? Very clear. They came out, it was nothing that you couldn't understand about what they said or what they wrote. Now, all that's come right back. We have the deep state, whether you believe there's one or not, you can damn sure believe there is one. They are now back in the hot seat. Now, you got a bunch of crazies. You got a bunch of Republican crazies that are going to be asking the questions and bringing people like Ray in and all these other folks that have been involved in this for so long. They're going to be bringing them in, and it's going to be crazy show. You're going to have crazy Republican asking, crazy FBI director or CIA director, whoever that person is of the day, questions. It's going to look like a circus. But out of there is going to come out the American public, if they're paying attention, will see that, yes, there's been a real effort by the deep state to involve themselves in politics. Yes, they have maneuvered American politics. Yes, corporate media has ignored all of that. In fact, denied that it even exists. And they'll do it on these hearings too. I think they're calling these church hearings a second time. I believe they are. But anyway, that's the good that comes out of it, Lee. It's gonna look like a clown show. All right. Yeah. And, you're going to have people like Brennan and Clapper and all these folks that have just done nothing but devoted themselves to a specific Democratic agenda that was driven largely by Hillary Clinton and largely by Bill and, all the old timers. But they were just part of that family. And now what we're going to start seeing is some of this is going to come out. Now, you won't see MSNBC or CNN or anybody reporting it. The only places you're going to get it is shows like this or The Intercept or, good social media programs that actually aren't afraid to tell the story.
Yeah. And it like you're saying, we've been saying this for many years, but now it's like we finally see the documents, see the proof. I knew that after 2016, after Bernie nearly won the presidency, I saw my Facebook become completely shadow banned. Couldn't get anyone to see my posts. None of this got alerted to me. They didn't tell me, hey, you're now shadow banned. It just happened. And now we're seeing, at least with Twitter, we see the internal documents showing, the FBI was literally contacting Twitter on a daily basis saying, here's a long list of accounts we want suppressed.
Well, not only that, they also had the white list. Did you know that? They had a white list. The white list was the people from MSNBC, all the talking heads on MSNBC that say exactly what they're told to say, or CNN. Make sure Jake Tapper gets his story told. Make sure Rachel got her story. But the point being, they would throttle back anything that they disagreed with. And you know what, Lee? You know what's so incredible? Most of the American public doesn't really care anymore. If you line up, you line up 10, from 25 to 40, and ask, does this really matter to you? Does this have any significance to you? You're going to be amazed at the response. You're going to be amazed. They don't care. Right. Why? Because we've become so friggin' tribal that all they care about is MSNBC and CNN delivering what I'm thinking. Is Fox delivering what I'm thinking? Can I watch that and feel like I am accepted for what I'm thinking? Can I watch Chris? What's a Chris guy on MSNBC? We used to have him on our show. I can't think of his last name. But anyway, whoever it is on MSNBC.
Chris Matthews.
Okay. Let's use Chris Matthews. Is Chris Matthews delivering what I want him to say? Because if he is, I'm going to listen. But if he's not, I'm going to go somewhere else. You see, that's all they care about. It's tribalism that's killing us. I like to go on our show on America's Lawyer, Ring of Fire. I just love to go on and mess with them. I love to, bring out the snowflakes or bring out the right wingers just by saying something outrageous, because I'm saying something they don't agree with and they can't handle it. They don't want to analyze what I said. They simply want to go, by God, this isn't fair. Pap's an old codger. He's too old to be doing whatever it is. Pap's a lawyer trying to sell something. So we do it on purpose. What we do is, we do it on purpose. We try to draw them to our comment section and then mess with them, because it's this tribalism that you go, I don't care what the story is. Follow the story right now. Okay. You got Biden doing the same thing that Trump did. They got their documents. We all know why they have their documents. It's financial. Okay. With Biden, hell, I don't know. It may have to do with Hunter in Ukraine, may have to do with Hunter in China. I don't know why he has the doc, but he has the documents. He has the documents as vice president. But if you say, what is the difference here between what Biden's done and what that crazy nutcase Trump has done? What's the difference?
Right.
There's no difference, but you can't talk to them about that because they've become so, God, I don't know. It's worse than tribal. It's just this, I call it a new snowflake mentality on the left and a new right, hard right on the right.
Well, and our media, the mainstream media, which is seen by so many millions of people, makes a point of telling them to only care about the things that separate Trump from Biden. So they focus only on, Trump had the classified documents in Mar-a-Lago. They're not going to tell you how Trump and Biden have done an equal amount of environmental destruction as president.
Oh, definitely.
That type of thing, not covered.
Yeah, don't ignore the demented babble coming out of that man's mouth, because all we really cared about was he unseated Trump. That's all we care about.
No.
Not the fact that guy who's going to be 84 years old by, running for president again, that it's like we cannot think anymore. It's like, Chalmers Johnson, great mind. He used to follow he'd follow international imperialism all over the world. And he'd said, when we get to the point to where we can't objectively think about what's happening around us, that's really the first step to the loss of our democracy. And that's exactly what's happened. Exactly what's happening right now.
Since you brought up the media and how horrific it is, you've been in media a long time. You were important with Air America, the progressive radio network, and then you had your show was on RT America for a while, and that shut down. And now you continue it. But you, like me and Chris Hedges and many others, seem to have to jump from platform to platform. What do you feel? Do you feel our mainstream media is getting worse, or is it? Has it always been this little tiny window of allowable thought that you can put out?
It's a disaster. Okay, come on, man. It's a disaster. It doesn't. The advantage. This is not what I do to pay bills or make a living. I practice law. I try cases. And so we're able to build whatever we want to build. I mean, the advantage we have and the advantage you have is you can tell people really what you're thinking about, right? All right.
Yeah.
But when you talk about corporate media is it's wholly driven by what do the advertisers think and what do our political connections mandate that we do? Okay. It's virtue signaling most of the time. If you turn on Joe Scarborough, for example, Joe used to be my law partner. I don't know if you know that.
Really?
Yeah. We helped him get his job with MSNBC.
Oh my God. So,
no, true story. So right now, how much I know what the guy's about. He started off as the guy that was defending the abortion church bombers. He was defending him, and or the guy that comes in and kills a bunch of whoever. He was the voice for them. That's how far right he was. Now, out of the whole new virtue signaling, he's kind of moved that way to the left because the money's good.
He's a centrist Democrat now.
Yeah, the money's good. Pay me $10 million. Hell yeah, I don't believe it, but I'll say it.
Right.
And but the point is, there's so few venues out there where you don't get that. Where somebody like Lee can say what he wants to say. He says it, and you know what? You're just like me, Lee. I don't really care what the fault. I don't care what the criticism is. I really don't. It doesn't change my life a bit. And it gives us really kind of freedom. Like I say, we sometimes bait comments into our site because we like to just mess with them. We'll say something that, we know is going to bring in the left wing. We know it's going to be in the right. And so the point being, corporate media doesn't have the freedom to do that. They never have. Air America Look at Air America. Air America, let's see, it was me, Bobby Kennedy, Chuck D, Rachel Maddow, Janine Garofalo, you, Shank Uger. I mean, you remember the crowd, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we had a great setup of great liberal thinkers there, but we understood there's no way we can break into the norm. There was no way that we could talk about the fact that Ford has created another bomb, that they've created another exploding car, or that Merck has created another drug that's killing thousands of people. We couldn't talk about that and get advertising dollars.
Yeah.
But we talked about it anyway, and we went out of business. But it was fun while it lasted, huh?
Yeah. I mean, the media, it just comes down to all about the money. And I actually found it. There were a couple of things, I don't watch, but you brought up Joe Scarborough. I don't watch him, but there were a couple of times that he did something so outrageous that I knew about it. One of them was he got one of the only ever, this is 5-6 years ago, only ever interviews with the Koch brothers together. And it was the most fawning pile of shit interview I've ever seen. No questions that pressed them in any way about their, destruction of America.
No, my God. I mean, how do you get them in front of you? Not just have a heyday, man. It's like bloodbath. It's just corporate media they're in the decline because it's their own fault. The problem you and I have to worry about as they move into decline, they're now trying to take up our space. You see, they're now trying to move. Okay, well, we screwed up corporate media on TV. We screwed up our magazine. We screwed up our newspaper. Let's move over here to social media. Let's now get possession of that. That you followed the legislation all year long, right? Where they were trying to grab control of social media by giving themselves a superior position to buy ads, to place their story. If you look at, we'll post this on, if we can, if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
We'll post this on Ring of Fire.
Sure.
And then after we post it, nothing we're talking about is anything you would hear in corporate media. But after our story, if you look over to the right side of the page as you're looking at your computer, you'll see all these other stories: MSNBC, CNN, CNN. Nothing to do with anything we're talking about. But they buy access. And if this legislation passes that's out there right now, they're going to have even more access.
Yeah, that you're exactly right. And again, I think the biggest shift came in about 2016. My videos since then and to now, they will show, if someone watches, back when I was at Redacted Tonight, if someone watched a Redacted Tonight clip before 2016, the algorithm would think, oh, you like this content, we'll show you another Redacted Tonight clip.
Right.
After that, it would push people to MSNBC and CNN. It was, oh, you've stumbled off of the mainstream media. Let's push you back.
This person isn't smart enough. We want you to talk to Joe, or we want you to talk to Chris or whoever.
Yeah.
They're so much smarter. Maybe they're going to say something you agree with, but the topic will be like out in left field. We'll be talking about the issues we're talking about, the spook industry taking over the internet, the advertising industry taking over corporate media. And then they'll move on to something like, what did Paris Hilton wear today for this award ceremony?
Exactly. I want to move to, you've done a lot of good work over the years on how our water supplies have been tainted largely by corporate America, but other entities as well. I remember you having some great interviews with Aaron Brockovich and as well. And I just did a segment a week ago about the studies showing there's more uranium in a lot of groundwater around those mines than anyone had ever bothered to tell us about. But you've been doing stuff on Camp Lejeune and what went on with the water there, right?
Yeah, Camp Lejeune is a horror story. Unfortunately, I don't know. Well, here, let me give you the story first. First of all, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, the U.S. government understood that they were contaminating the drinking water of the families that were living on Camp Lejeune, the soldiers and their soldiers' family. They were contaminating the water with at least three. Let's just focus on three. It's actually 10, but three of the worst toxins on the planet. If you were to take the worst toxins on the planet, line them up, these three would be somewhere in the top 6. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was going into the drinking water of these folks every day. It was being pumped directly into into the drinking water, the sink water, the bathtub. And so entire families were wiped out. I mean, literally entire families.
Really?
Dying of things like leukemia, brain cancer, birth defects, neurological disease, just on and on. I mean, the damages are horrendous. And there's probably 250,000 people that have been affected, clearly affected. Another 250 that has got to be examined a little closer. But the reason the government didn't tell anybody was because a serviceman can't sue the government for their injuries while they're in the line of service. The family can, okay? The family can, and the people outside Camp Lejeune. In other words, if Camp Lejeune is covering a 10-mile area, the people right outside there can if they get poisoned, they certainly can come back in and sue. So the government had to keep it really quiet. And so because of that, now you have thousands of people that are being, it's a great story. A lawyer named Ed Bell, great lawyer in South Carolina, took this case on about 12 years ago. 12, 13 years ago, yeah. And so he didn't have any success with it. So what he did was he went to Congress and said, we need to change this law. We need to allow these servicemen to be able to sue. They fought for us all over the world. They've traveled all over the world protecting us. And now we need to at least give back by allowing them to come back in and sue the government for their losses. And so he spent about $14 million of his own money trying to make that happen. And he worked on that project for 12 years to get it accomplished. And so now he is there. He's asked me to work with him on actually trying these cases up in North Carolina. I'm excited to do that. The government has a pretty clear mandate from Congress. And it is, we did wrong. We lied to you. We covered up. Some people in management and the DOD made some really, really bad decisions. People have died because of it. And now we need to make these people right.
That's incredible. Yeah, I guess I kind of knew that, but that soldiers can't sue for the harm that's done to them. I mean, it both goes with there's been medical testing done to American soldiers over the years that they can't sue for. Mm-hmm. There's, of course, many people know about Agent Orange and the harm that was done to our mm-hmm. service members for during Vietnam. And, the idea that these people should just be, I don't know. Well, they're I guess the government's view is since they're being used as cannon fodder, they might as well use them for all these other things too.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not the government. At some point, it becomes corporate America. Mm-hmm. Like the Agent Orange was clearly corporate America. They knew exactly what was going on, and so they over the years they've expanded this protection. Okay, it used to be. Obviously, soldiers killed in the line of, injured in the line of combat. Of course, we get that. But when a corporation comes in and they make something like Agent Orange that everybody that delivered that product knew exactly what it was going to do. It was going to cause birth defects, brain cancer, every kind of cancer known to mankind. And we're going to spray it on our soldiers anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's different when you say, okay, that soldier's out there and we expect them to be harmed in line of duty, but this is real different.
Well, thank you for taking that on. You're one of the. We'll wrap it up in a couple of minutes here, but you're one of the few good guy lawyers out there, I feel like, and I was wondering if you could speak on why there aren't more, but also how we could get to a place that there are more lawyers that are
No, it's
focused on
yeah.
protecting people.
Real simple answer here, man. The law schools have all doubled down on trying to send their students to big corporate defense firms. That's what it's about. The law school is trying to increase their importance by saying we employed 50 of our graduate law students that were the top, very top of the class with some of these awful law firms. I mean, awful in the sense they make a ton of money. They harm people at such a rate that it's almost inconceivable, the harm they do. They tell these young lawyers that are graduating from law school, maybe it's a victory if you succeed in keeping this corporation, protecting this corporation after they've killed 1,000 people with a bad drug. If you've succeeded in protecting them and they don't have to pay, that's a big victory. I mean, that's the nature of what a defense lawyer that operates at that level has to say to themselves. Yeah, this was great. I succeeded in keeping these widows from recovering for this product. So it's the law school that's driving it. Matter of fact, I've had it out with a couple of law schools around that I've given money to over the years. I said, you will not get one more dime from me until you change this policy of trying to feed this awful mechanism of defense lawyers. And you take the very top lawyers and you tell them, hey, you're getting out of law school, we're going to pay you a lot of money. And that's where you push them. But the truth is, people that do what I do, I make, far more than they make. But there's a big risk, and the law school doesn't promote that. They promote it now with me because they want all my money. But when I was coming out of law school, it was like, he's going to go with the plaintiff's firm. Really? He's going to do mass torts, and really? We don't have any kinship with that until we settle tobacco, and then all of a sudden they start looking at us. But the law school drives that. It's truthfully driven by the law school.
That's interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard that take. What would your advice be to a lawyer who's going after one of these corporations? Because I've seen I have a couple of family members who are lawyers, and I watched them in one circumstance go after very large corporations, and it was 3 lawyers against table after table after table of these executive lawyers with their laptops. It looked ridiculous. These 3 little guys against, and it was like, and he ended up winning, but it looked like, how could 3 people ever beat these reams of corporate lawyers?
Yeah. Okay. Well, it always comes down to the fact that numbers don't matter. It's just your commitment. I mean, it really is. I mean, it sounds Pollyanna to say that, but it is. I mean, there's not a case, Lee, there's not a case I've ever tried that I haven't had literally 15 lawyers with 50 staff behind them. And I've got me, 2 paralegals, 2 associates, at the table. And it plays out. A jury sees that. The jury understands, what the hell? I mean, you got an injured victim over here. You got a whole army trying to keep one injured victim from recovering. The dynamics of it are interesting in trial. It's what we see all the time. It's what I've grown up with my entire legal career.
All right, last question, and I really appreciate your time. In this fight, as you keep going, and I've ended a few interviews like this, most recently with Stella Assange, as you're fighting for justice and you're up against so much, what gives you hope? What gives you strength today?
Well, I think it's a matter. I don't know that it's something that you learn. And that scares me a little bit. I think it's something that it's in your DNA or not. I hate to say that. Now, you can influence people, and I can take a young lawyer and I can say, what are you thinking? I mean, you're the last line in the sand for this person. Okay, the government's not there for them. Regulators aren't there for them. The media's not there for them. You're it. You're the last line in the sand. And that's either going to scare the bejesus out of that guy, that woman, that lawyer, or they're going to rise up to the occasion. And so constantly rise to the occasion.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. And I highly recommend everybody check out the Ring of Fire website, your show, everything you guys do.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate it. It's good to see you again. I hope we can talk more often. You're over there in Sweden right now. When you make it back to the U.S., stop by, would you?
Will do. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
All right, folks, that is it for today's interview for Behind the Headlines. This is a Mint Press project over at youtube.com/Behind the Headlines. And I hope you enjoyed that incredible interview. Mike Papantonio always doing amazing work, because there just aren't enough people that are because you got to fight corporations at every different level, the corporate destruction of our world, which owns our government, really. And you got to fight them at every different level. You need those people chaining themselves to pipelines. You also need the Mike Papantonios of the world that are taking, the big pharma, big oil, big water pollutants to court and beating them. So you got to fight him at every level. And I'm glad he's doing that and continues to do it. But if you enjoyed this interview, please become a member at patreon.com/Behind the Headlines. I also talked to Stella Assange this week, Julian Assange's wife. If you want to see that interview, that's at youtube.com/Behind the Headlines. Please click subscribe, leave a comment, thumbs up. It all helps the algorithm that we're fighting, that I talked to Mike about, that we're fighting every day. So all of that helps. But most importantly, if you're able to support this show at all, because we're completely independently funded, we do not, for some odd reason, corporate America hasn't offered tons of money to support us. I don't know why. So patreon.com/Behind the Headlines. And I'll see you next week. Keep fighting.